page, and here in the Mystical Life Publications team, we've looked a lot into plagiarism, and we deal a lot with plagiarism of our author's work. And today we wanted to sit down and just have a chat about the issue of plagiarism in a larger context and the implications of it, because it affects a lot of different areas, as well as just to give our perspective on it. So to get us started, how about you just explain what is plagiarism?
Okay, so basically most people would be familiar with copyright, the notion of copyright, and then when somebody is plagiarizing or passing work off as their own, that actually belongs to somebody else. So it can happen in different forms. It can be a straight word for word copy or reproduction of the original source, or it can also happen in a more less obvious way. So it can be, rehashing the original work of somebody else's, perhaps describing it in slightly different terms, but essentially taking the same structure and content and passing it off as one's own. So it's not actually that any facts or information is owned by somebody, but it's the way that it's actually expressed. Yeah. So the same with spirituality. Nobody owns spirituality, but it's the unique expression and way that it's presented that we are looking at protecting in what we publish.
Where I most see it and what I'm more dealing with is I see people just copying and pasting our authors' articles on blog websites, people on their Facebook pages, posting articles or quotes and things and passing it off as their own. To me, it's they're just, it's all based kind of around self-interest, and it's to help generate content for their website, make interesting content, unique content, and
get traffic.
And to get traffic to their website. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing. And Matthew, you've written an article about how materialism posing as mysticism subverts spirituality and limits consciousness. So I wanted to get your take on this, because you kind of wrote about it in your article. What's your take on plagiarism of spiritual works, especially of our authors?
Yeah, well, I suppose you could say it's part of a wider pattern. The article you mentioned before was just talking about a trend, a very big trend in the sort of spirituality today, the New Age and mind, body, spirit sort of scene, where it's no longer about overcoming selfishness, overcoming desire, overcoming materialism and attachment, which is what spiritual teachings of many different traditions have all been about, so that you can then help others and be altruistic and so forth. Instead, it's about sort of selfishness and personal gain, sort of like being spiritual in order to acquire all the things you want, get all the things you want, be successful. That is, other people will like you, you'll get money, you'll be wealthy, you'll get whatever. So, and that's not really what spirituality is about. It's not about boosting your ego. It's actually about overcoming your ego. So in the context of that, you can see that the message of spirituality gets distorted. People are actually completely turning something that's about overcoming egocentrism to actually making it about egocentrism. And if that's the motive for a lot of works, and a lot of these are very successful in making a lot of money, and if it's about essentially teaching people how to boost their egos, and then in the process some people are getting quite wealthy out of pushing those sorts of messages, then you can see that same motive is going to manifest in other ways, because things are a bit off track there. And so plagiarism just seems to be part of that. It's people taking another person's work, passing it off as their own, and there's not really any integrity in that. If you had integrity, you would, if you wanted to refer to someone else's work and you like it, you'd attribute it. But to take someone else's work and pass it off as your own is, it's a pretty low thing to do, and the impact that it can have, just as these other messages out there are distorting what spirituality is about, the message that you're taking from someone else can be distorted, because these sorts of sort of popular, commercialized type spirituality tend to be a very watered down sort of thing. And so they take something and they're only going to take the palatable parts. And then there's no way for even if there's an element of truth there, it's in a whole different context. And there's no way for the person to get back to the original work where a more in-depth and full message is there.
Yeah. Both of you guys, you can feel free to answer this. What are the implications of this? Matthew, you kind of started talking about some of the implications of this, but what's the problem with this?
Yeah, so following on from a point that Matthew raised, when you see a paragraph or an excerpt of a book from our authors taken and then put in somebody else's book or website or whatever it may be, it's often divorced from the original context. So the necessary detail and further information that is really important to that point is gone, and it's often then manipulated and changed knowingly or unknowingly by the person that's reproduced it and couched it with their own terms and points. So it's really important in that way to link back to the source at least, so that if somebody is interested or a certain point resonates with them and it does come from another book or another article, they can go back and see that. So I think that's one important sort of aspect.
And just in writing in general, that's a standard thing. If you take a paragraph from someone else's work and you put it in your article, which is fine to do as long as you attribute it, and so if someone reads that and they're interested in whoever you've quoted, they can see where it came from and go back to it. It's not doing that is it's bad enough that it's happening in spiritual things, but just on a very mundane level, that if you do that in university, for example, you can get expelled, for plagiarizing works and not actually, passing it off as your own. It's just not the right thing to do.
What's your response to people that kind of put the question of, hey, who cares? As long as I'm passing on the message, isn't it more important that the message gets out there than, having this author be known?
Yeah, look, it's like, as I mentioned, it's not that, spirituality is owned by anybody, but what is really important is preserving the integrity of something. So when a person has shared their own insights and understanding and experience of a certain aspect of spirituality, with an audience, then for another person to in a sense take what they understand and make of that and repackage it slightly to suit their own self-interest is not actually helping the message of spirituality, because a person that comes across the second version of it may not, would not really truly experience and understand the depth of that original spiritual teaching, because it's adulterated in a sense by even unconscious self-interest and desires of the person that's taken it and sort of put their own spin on it. So certainly that's right, spiritual truth is for everybody, but it's also understanding that if you are somebody that genuinely does care about spirituality, then it's not like helpful to repackage or take somebody else's work and just put your own spin on it, basically.
And there's no reason, if people want to support a message and they want to sort of, you mentioned people quoting a paragraph, if they're going to do that, there's no reason why they can't indicate where it's from and attribute it. I mean, no one's saying that you can't, quote from a book that you really like, but it's not giving the attribution, and that's the problem.
Yeah, definitely, and that is it. Like, that's our perspective. What can be done about this? Like, we have taken steps, and we've talked about it. It's like there is a way to contact us through gospelweb.com or our website if you see cases of plagiarism of our authors' works, and we're following things up. But what more can be done?
Personally, I just the initial thing is just raising awareness. Just talking about it, being aware of it, so that at least for ourselves as content creators, we aren't sort of unconsciously influenced in that way, and can draw the line between, what we know and what we don't know, and when we're, using somebody else's material as sourcing. And that's not just for what we publish, but generally, broadly speaking, as Matthew mentioned, in universities, if you had to write an essay, and you're relying on research that you've done and other sources, just properly attributing them is a basic requirement. So I feel, look, if that's the standard for universities, it should certainly be the standard for people that are publishing books and, other things that they intend to sell or get out there to an audience.
Yeah.
It's a basic thing. So yeah, I would just say, just understanding, familiarizing yourself with what the laws are around copyright and use, and if in doubt, just always shoot an email to the publisher just to check if it's okay, and be aware of it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks guys for joining me in this chat. It's been really good just to talk a little bit more about it, kind of the depth of this issue, and yeah, hopefully just bring awareness to the conversation on this issue. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
That's it for us. Till next time.